And joining us now is Michael O'Loughlin, who is the author of this book, The Tweetable Pope. And thanks so much for being with us, Mike.
Sure, happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the book and how you decided to write it.
Sure, yeah. So I can't say there was one moment where I thought, the world really needs a book about Pope Francis's Twitter account. That didn't happen. It was really over a period of several weeks and months. When I was logging onto Twitter, as a journalist, I start my day every morning by going onto Twitter to see what's happening. I noticed that the Pope's tweets kept showing up in my feed. And it wasn't because he was tweeting a lot. He only sends about 3 to 4 tweets a week. But people were retweeting them. They were quoting him. They were really responding to these tweets. And I thought something new was going on here. People are really kind of engaging with Pope Francis on Twitter. So I went to his Twitter account and I downloaded all his tweets. And I started reading through them. And it really occurred to me that you can learn a lot about what Pope Francis has in mind for the church simply by reading these short messages. So, there were things about Jesus and God and prayer, and that's not surprising because that's kind of the Pope's job. But there were also things about sports and work and immigration and social justice. And I thought these kind of short messages are a great way for people who are kind of taken with this Pope, but maybe aren't involved in the church on a day-to-day basis like we are. It's a great way for them to really understand Pope Francis and understand the church. So I thought, let's explore the tweets more. Let's put them into context and see what's happening here. And that's how the book came about.
Was it hard to pick out certain tweets, or how'd you go about doing that?
Yeah, it wasn't too difficult because some are so, to me, so appealing for how direct they are, how candid they are. So, for example, in April of 2014, I'm sure people remember, we were having this big national conversation about income inequality. And I remember the Pope sent a tweet that said simply, social inequality, or inequality is the root of social evil. And it was so direct and candid. I thought, wow, this is a Pope who knows what his flock is talking about, who's willing to take a stance on a really controversial issue and put it out there for the world to see. So some of those tweets really stuck with me, and I thought, well, these have to be included, of course. But there were also these beautiful tweets about prayer, about even stepping away from our iPhones and tablets and kind of taking a breather from technology. That I thought that's interesting. He's using technology to remind us there's more to life than the screen. So there were a whole range of tweets, and it wasn't difficult to pick because so many of them are so great.
Yeah. Talk about Twitter and all these social media devices and how, the Pope is obviously doing a great job using that, but how they can help the church's message and the Pope's message as well.
Yeah, it's a way I think people today, because of the technology we have, they really demand an authentic encounter with their leaders. And that's difficult. In previous, even a decade ago, it would be nearly impossible to connect with the Pope directly. But people feel as though they are connecting with Pope Francis, and they want to hear from him. They don't want to hear, his message spun by people with an agenda or kind of get a dense document. They want to hear what he has to say. So this is, I think, the perfect medium for a Pope who loves connecting with people to really be able to send a message that speaks to their heart. So it's interesting because the Pope doesn't tweet himself. He's not sitting at a computer typing out 140 characters, but he is coming up with the ideas. He tells a team of advisors what he wants to tweet about. They go back into his homilies and messages, and they find the 140 characters, which is Twitter's limit. They find those messages that will work. They write the tweets out in Italian or Spanish and bring them back to Pope Francis, who then approves each one. So for the Pope's 25 million followers, it's a fairly authentic engagement, I think. They can feel confident that this is what's on the Pope's mind.
Yeah. And we're at the bishops' conference. Do you find like this trickling down to bishops, priests, are they picking up on this and going with it as well for their message?
Yeah, I think slowly they are. I know that recently, after the attacks in Paris, I wrote a story about kind of the Vatican's immediate response to the attacks, standing in solidarity with victims and praying for victims. But I also explored what bishops were saying on social media. And there were a handful of U.S. bishops who immediately went onto Twitter and talked about their feelings about the attacks and calling for prayers and solidarity. There were a handful, but there weren't as many as I thought there might be. So I think it's kind of, the Pope is on Twitter, so bishops see that it's okay to use this kind of technology, but they're taking their time and really adopting it and using it in a way that I think it's meant to be used.
and of course the Pope Francis phenomena. Talk about this Pope and how he has reached out to so many different people, like you said, the people on the fringe, on the edge of society that have been marginalized, and what makes this Pope so popular? Why are people just sort of flocking? It doesn't matter if they're Catholic or not.
I mean, it's incredible. Or during the visit to the United States, just to see those massive crowds who wanted just a glimpse of the Pope. I was in Philadelphia covering the visit for Crux, and I walked out to the Parkway, which was just filled with people. And all he was going to do was drive by and wave, and they were so excited to just get a glimpse of him. And I think it's something about craving authentic leadership. Pope Francis certainly comes across as someone who lives out what he says, kind of believes in the core gospel message. And honestly, I think that's rare to see a world leader who really gets it and kind of lives out his principles. So he's continuing to connect with people in that way. We're almost 3 years into his papacy now, and there doesn't seem to be any let up in this desire to really love this Pope. So, he's using that platform and really getting his message out there, and Twitter is just another way for him to do that.
Thank you so much, Michael, for being here. And the Tweetable Pope is the name of the book, and where people get this?
Wherever books are sold, as they say.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Michael. Appreciate it.